This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're taking a look at the Toshiba Portege Z830 Ultrabook. It's a 13.3-inch Ultrabook, which means it's all Intel based. It's very thin and very light. And this is, think of it as the updated model. First we saw the Best Buy version for only $900 at the end of 2011, and typical Best Buy model to cut some corners. They use an i3 CPU and stuff. And they can get this with an i5, an i7 CPU, and this particularly is the business model, so it comes with Windows 7 Professional. And the fingerprint scanner here and a matte display. So we're going to take a look at it in detail. First you can see thin, light, small, incredibly light, 2.4 pounds, the lightest of the Ultrabooks. It's absurd. It's sort of like the feeling you have when you pick up the iPad 2 after handling the iPad. It's marvelous. So this is a Toshiba Portege Z830, and let's get the confusing stuff out of the way first. Typical of Toshiba notebooks, there's the line that ends in a 0, like Z830, and the one that ends in a 5, like the Z835. The Z835, or the 5 models in general, indicate consumer retail channel sales. So if you pick it up in Best Buy or Fry's or where have you, it's going to end with a 5, generally speaking. The 0 means it's either purchased from ToshibaDirect.com or you've purchased it as a business unit. And typical of business units, ours does have some business features that we're going to go over, and you're going to pay a bit extra for that. Now, if you're interested in some of the features that are here, like the Core i5 or Core i7 CPU upgrades and that kind of stuff, you can get that in the Z835 model as well. Now, the Best Buy $899 version, that comes with a Core i3. Pretty much all the other specs are the same, though. But honestly, I always say friends don't let friends buy Core i3 CPUs on ULV chassis if you can help it. It's about $100 or $150 upgrade, and if you're trying to decide which things you want to add and subtract, the Core i5 is a lot more powerful than the i3. It's a dual-core CPU, just like the Core i7, and the i3 is a little bit more anemic. So if you want something that's going to last you a couple of years, lean towards that i5 if you can. i7 in the ULV CPUs currently doesn't make as much of a difference, so it's not worth so much spending your money on the i7 versus the i5 in the ULV machines like you'll see in Ultrabooks. And ULV means ultra low voltage, typically used in these very thin, very light notebooks as opposed to your more standard size notebooks. So the Portege Z830 and also the Z835, well, they're your typical Ultrabooks, and what that means, it's part of Intel's initiative to make machines that are a lot like the MacBook Air in terms of design and form factor. That means fairly high quality materials. Obviously Intel CPUs, ULV CPUs again, Intel graphics, usually Intel wireless Wi-Fi, that kind of thing, though we see some divergence like the Asus ZenBook that we reviewed uses Atheros Wi-Fi, but mostly you'll find all Intel chips inside. It has to be 3 pounds or under, though again we're also seeing ones that are going over that, tipping the scale a little heavier, like the HP Folio 13 weighs 3.3 pounds. Speaking of weight though, this guy weighs 2.47 pounds. It's insanely light, it's feather light, it's disconcertingly light actually. And it's even obviously lighter than the ZenBook UX31, which was previously one of the lightest at 2.86 pounds. Now, the difference between this and the ZenBook, other than the fact that one's made by Toshiba and one's made by Asus, is this guy has a very staid-looking appearance. As you can see, you pretty much got clean silver surfaces, magnesium alloy casing, there's a magnesium honeycomb structure underneath, supposedly, and a very simple plain lid. Nice looking, not too bad, I don't mind it. You got your chrome accents here, just like there are chrome accents on the mouse pad, but one drawback for all this lightness here is the ZenBook is so rigid. I mean, you could use that to slice through something, honestly. And this guy, well, there's a lot of flex here. You can see me just doing wiggly, wiggly, wiggly. It's kind of freaky, right? So that's the drawback to getting a machine that's this light. There is not enough room for metal here, and that adds weight, obviously, the more metal you're going to use. Does that mean that this machine is cheaply made or is going to fall apart? No to both of those questions. Again, they did that just to make it so very light, and it seems pretty sturdy. Very well made, really nicely put together, perfectly matched seams. Once it's closed, it's very rigid. The bottom section does not have any play in it, so it's just that display lid where you're really going to notice that. So, well, be careful torsioning the display, why don't you? Okay, so here's the top view of your lid, a little brushed metal look going on here, giant Toshiba logo, your chrome accents where your hinge mounts on the sides here, good sturdy hinge mechanism, though there is a little bit of play, you can wobble it a little bit, probably in part because the display lid is so light. The real treat on the back is Toshiba. They love to give you ports, just like the Toshiba Thrive tablets. But unlike the Thrive, you're not sacrificing weight and thickness. Obviously, this is super thin and super light. But look at all these ports here. You've got Ethernet built in. No dongle is required, like with the MacBook Air or the ZenBook. You've got 2 USB ports on the back. One's a sleep and charge port. Full-size HDMI, not micro. Your charging ports here, and there's also a VGA port. If we look on the side here, there's one USB 3.0 port in addition, so you've got 3 USB ports total. And on this side we have separate mic and headphone jacks and an SD card slot. And one thing I really like, you see the little cutout over here? That makes it easier to lift the lid up. And it looks kind of cool too, breaks up the otherwise very simple lines. And on the bottom, now don't worry here, there's just a little bit of adhesive goo from a sticker that was on here. It's not, the casing has become damaged. You've got your fan. This fan is very quiet, but it's kind of got one of those little high-pitched, you're always going to hear it. It's a slightly annoying, but maybe you're not so sensitive to that pitch. Sucks air in here, shoves it out right back here. Really not a whole lot of room for circulation going on. There are 12 screws around the edge here. Looks pretty easy to take apart, right there, Phillips head. Well, the gotcha is this little guy, he's kind of semi-glued on. If you pull him off, there's a real teeny tiny little torque screw for that last screw if you want to get at the guts in here. So I don't think Toshiba really intends you to be taking this guy apart. Like most Ultrabooks, the battery is sealed inside, and pretty much they expect what you buy is what you got in terms of your hard drive and your memory and all that kind of thing. Now we'll compare it to the similarly priced, a little bit heavier, Lenovo IdeaPad U300 Ultrabook. And you can see them here side by side. Well, they're going to have the same footprint, pretty much all of these Ultrabooks do. And the Lenovo is not quite so thin. Lenovo goes for that distinctive book design, but the thickness actually isn't all that far off. And Lenovo weighs about 6 or 8 ounces more, which, believe it or not, you can really feel the difference. And now we'll compare the Toshiba Portege Z830 to the latest generation MacBook Air 13-inch. Again, just about the same footprint. MacBook Air is a little bit longer that way, just like Lenovo was, and see from the side, of course, the MacBook Air looks even thinner than it is because it tapers quite a lot and gets a little thicker towards the bottom, as you can see here. And there's our side view. Now, regardless of which version of the Z830 or 835 you get, you're going to get a backlit keyboard. Not a bad keyboard. You don't get much travel on Ultrabooks because they're so darn skinny, but as keyboards go, I like this one rather a lot. There's really not much flex at all. You have to really push down to try to flex. It feels good. A very large, bold, all caps marking on your keys here kind of looks extremely bold next to a relatively small keyboard deck. Normal layout. I like the arrow pad right here, and you've got your usual page up, down, and end keys and stuff on the right-hand side. And you've got your trackpad with the button to disable it in case palm rejection isn't really working out for you. Standard right and left click buttons, and you can see since there's not much room on the edges to put LED notifications, they've got them all here underneath the trackpad. Right and mouse clickers, chrome colored. They really love fingerprints. You're going to be wiping those frequently. And because this is the business model, we have a fingerprint scanner with trusted platform module for security. They all have 1366 by 768 displays, but the Z835 models have gloss displays. So if you don't like gloss displays, keep that in mind. They're all TN panels, which means, viewing angles are not super duper great. Side to side, not so bad. The usual top to bottom, not as good, so you have to angle a little bit, but it's not that bad, really. I didn't find I had to fuss with it, say, as much as the Samsung Series 7 Chronos that require a whole lot of forward-back adjustment to find the sweet spot on it. You've got your webcam up here, your power button is over here, and FN keys, and these are embedded, actually all moving down into the second row of keys. You can see your volume controls are actually not on the FN, they're down in the second row, and a couple of other things as well, which is, well, a little bit strange, but okay. They're trying to do a little space saving here. The trackpad behaves reasonably well as Windows trackpads go. It does support multi-touch. It's not too teeny tiny, so you've got some room to work multi-touch gestures, but it's not exactly immense either. Not bad overall, though. And because our model is the top-of-the-line model that sells for $1,429, it has an Intel Core i7 ULV CPU. That's a dual-core CPU. And it's 1.8 gigahertz. It's the 2677M processor, which is what you typically see if you get the i7 option in any Ultrabook. There's also an i5 1.7 gigahertz option. I think that's just fine for everyday performance. And again, as I mentioned, there's also an i3, which, if you can help it, I say, don't get it. They all have Intel HD 3000 integrated graphics, typical of Ultrabooks, and it works fine. And this has Intel Wi-Fi as well, advanced N, and it has Intel WiDi, which means wireless display, so you can actually replicate your display here on your HD TV, if it's a smart TV with Wi-Fi. In terms of horsepower and performance, this machine scores 9938 on PCMark Vantage, and that's a bit misleading, as we've seen with some of the other Ultrabooks, because it has an SSD drive that's very fast, and PCMark Vantage is in love with SSD drives, and it ranks those very highly, where a typical, even 7200 RPM hard drive ranks in the 4,000 to 5,000s on PCMark Vantage. It gives this Toshiba branded 128 gig SSD a 19,000 rating, so that really skews the scores. So take that with a grain of salt, but still Windows Experience Index numbers are good on this, and I'll show you. CPU gets a 6.9 for the i7 ULV CPU. We've got 7.3 for memory, 5.9 for desktop performance for Aero, 6.2 for gaming and business graphics, and 6.7 for disk data transfer rate. I'm actually surprised that that didn't go even higher than that, because it's a very fast hard drive, or not hard drive, SSD drive that Toshiba has made for this model. They all come with a 128 gig SSD drive, and they're available with either 4 or 6 gigs of RAM. Now that's interesting, because so far most Ultrabooks just have 4 gigs soldered on the motherboard. That's it, that's all you're doing. And this guy can go up to 6 gigs. For everyday use, if you're doing business tasks or even school things like web browsing, email, Office Suite, even Photoshop, it's actually fine. Now, if you're a serious Photoshop jockey and you're working with 20 or 50 meg files and you're running a lot of filters, obviously you're using Intel integrated graphics here, you're going to notice it's not super duper fast, but it's adequate. Color accuracy of the display, it's a little hypercolor saturated, a little bit vivid there, and the matte really actually helps when working with images, but overall, as notebook displays go that aren't appealing to high-end graphics folks, it's not a bad display at all in terms of color accuracy. How does it perform for streaming video? Things like YouTube. YouTube actually being one of the more difficult things since it uses Adobe Flash. Let's check it out. We're right here on the YouTube site right now. So we'll check out something from the front page. That's playing great. Now you get to hear the little speakers that are built in. You know, it's an Ultrabook. They're not really very big speakers. It doesn't compete with the ZenBook with this really nice sound system, but it's pretty good. If you turn it up to maximum, you will hear some buzzing from the speakers, so you might want to be careful and not blow it out. Headphone jack, of course, always available to you. Also, it's Bluetooth, so you can use Bluetooth speakers if you want, or Bluetooth stereo headset or headphones. Plays just fine. And now we're checking out Hulu Plus, also usually pretty demanding. Let's see what we can find to play here. And now we're checking out Hulu at 480p, and we'll pop it out to full screen.
Do you think I'm pulling this hat off? No! From the top!
Plays perfectly well. So clearly it's capable of some video entertainment stuff, and that's a lot more demanding than most office tasks that you can do, so you can see it handles that just fine. One thing, this is a 1366 by 768 panel. That's pretty much standard for most 13-inch notebooks, but if you need more screen real estate, say working with spreadsheets, you want windows side by side, the ZenBook with its 1600 by 900 pixel display panel does beat this guy. In terms of gaming, not so much. This is a ULV CPU. They're fairly capable performers, to be honest, and they're up to most tasks you can throw at them, but gaming is very demanding. We're talking about 3D gaming here, and you just have Intel integrated HD 3000 graphics, so older games, yes, casual games for sure, but don't expect to be playing Crysis 2 or something like that on this, because it just isn't going to be able to handle it. Speaking of games also, there is no built-in optical drive on Ultrabooks, so you're going to need to use an external drive if you want to do something like install games or use games that use the drive itself as a copy protection mechanism. Not so much of a problem for using Steam or a service like that, of course. Now, if you're interested in the Toshiba Portege Z830 series, and which one should you get? If you want the gloss display, then get the 835. If you want the matte display and you need the fingerprint scanner and Windows 7 Professional, then get the business line. Now, the business line's a couple $100 more. That's what you're getting for your money there. If those things don't matter, again, go with the Z835. I would just say go with the Core i5 or better CPU on this guy for more long-lasting performance, so you don't 9 months from now say, ooh, I wish I had just spent 100 or 150 bucks more. Like all Ultrabooks, it's a great companion for on the road. It's super duper light, it has good strong Wi-Fi, a reasonably good display on it. And as keyboards go on these, by the way, this is a backlit keyboard, and by default it's set to use backlight on a timer, which is, I swear, is conservative as a smartphone. That means you tap it, and a minute later it's off. Kind of pointless there, but you can go and dig into Toshiba Echo settings, and you can actually set that timer to stop kicking in. Anyway, good backlighting, reasonably good keyboard for an Ultrabook, not a lot of travel, but really good spacing, reasonable tactile feedback, not too much flex, all that kind of stuff. So if you're looking for something light on the road to get basic tasks done, definitely it's capable of that. Even moderate tasks like Photoshop and coding and that kind of thing. The only thing we don't recommend this for is serious 3D gaming. Or for you folks who are into things like AutoCAD and all that super demanding stuff that needs dedicated graphics. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Visit our website for the full review, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this with your friends.